Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 11:11 this morning. Good to have you all here with us for the 11:11 celebration. Just a couple of quick notes. You'll notice that I am not Brad Thompson. Okay, the first service they went, oh. So I'm glad y'all didn't do that this time.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. That's
you.
all right. This is an old role for me. It's like I played my guitar last about 3 months ago. So it's
You're always with the band. We always want you in the band.
Thank you. Always in the back, just somewhere in the band. All right. So Brad's out for this weekend, so we're filling in here, and we got some great music. We also have Lisa Stovall back with us. We're so glad to have Lisa's excited to be back, and we're excited to have her back here. And I guess Caroline is gone they went on home. Yeah, we had her parents here with little Caroline, the newbie, and so it was really a lot of fun to have them here. So this morning we are into this series with the second Sunday, and the theme this Sunday, of course, the church-wide theme is prayer. We're talking about sort of healthy play, healthy balance. In here, we're kind of calling a balanced life, a balanced spiritual life. And what are good things for that? So last week we talked about cultivating curiosity. This morning we're talking about cultivating awareness. We're talking about prayer, but I'm thinking we're going to have some interesting ways of thinking about that. But in particular, I want to think with you about the blues. So we're starting off with the blues because this phrase you'll take this home with you. Prayer ain't nothing but the blues wide awake.
They call it Stormy Monday, but Tuesday's just as bad. Call it Stormy Monday, but Tuesday's just as bad. Oh Lord, Wednesday's even worse. Thursdays are so sad. I said the eagle flies on Friday. Saturday I go out to play. Said the eagle flies on Friday. Saturday I go out to play. Oh Lord. Sunday rolls around. I get down on my knees and I pray. This is what I say. I said, Lord, Lord, have mercy on me. Yeah. Said, Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. Yeah. Well, if you see my baby, please send her on home to me. Yeah. Oh no. Oh, blow that saxophone. Thank you. See, if the bass player can do that, God knows what everybody else in the band can do.
So this morning, kind of a strange thing. I saw a couple of folks coming in the back door going like, where are we again? Where are we? So let's all stand for a prayer as we get ready to sing together. Join me. Holy One, we're grateful for this morning. We're grateful for the weather. We're grateful for life. We are grateful for life and its ups and downs. We're especially grateful for this community, this chance to be together, this chance to be present with one another, and also this chance to simply be open to what is possible. And for all of those things and for the ways in which life moves, even with the blues, we are open to being awake and to being present to you in the midst of our being. And we offer this in the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen. So I'm going to invite you all to sing. I didn't even mention anything about registering attendance, but I hope you did that. And if you did, bring forward your card and bring an offering forward if you have that. We're going to sing this song together, this little Ruthie Foster song, Freedom, what it means to have that freedom. We're thinking about it. All right.
Well, I woke up this morning with my mind
stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind
stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Let's find your soul voice and join in.
Let me tell you, I'm a walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm a walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. 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 I'm singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
That's Mr. Jim Miller. He doesn't do that very often. Nice to hear that.
I'm teaching and preaching with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm teaching and preaching with my mind stayed on freedom. I'm teaching and preaching with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
There's no harm to
Keep your mind stayed on freedom. It ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. It ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Good singing, people. So take a moment to turn to one another, greet one another, signs of peace and welcome.
Hello. So as we continue thinking about prayer as awakening or cultivating awareness, I've chosen some words from the Nobel laureate Bob Dylan. In our time, right? Now, I want to say before I read this that what I am reading is, in my mind, it is in no way to question the awful and terrible sacrifices of people whose lives are lost in war. In fact, it is to take that very seriously. And so, from Bob Dylan, with God on our side. Oh, my name, it is nothing, my age means less. The country I come from, it's called the Midwest, and I was taught and brought up there the laws to abide. And the land that I live in has God on its side. Oh, the history books tell it. They tell it so well. The cavalry's charged, the Indians fell. The cavalry's charged, the Indians died. Oh, the country was young with God on its side. The Spanish-American War had its day, and the Civil War, too, was soon laid away, and the names of the heroes I was made to memorize with the guns on their hands and God on their side. The First World War, boys, it came and went. The reason for fighting I never did get, but I learned to accept it with pride. For you don't count the dead when God's on your side. When the Second World War came to an end, we forgave the Germans, and then we became friends, though they murdered 6 million in the ovens they fried. The Germans now, too, have God on their side. I've learned to hate Russians all through my whole life. If another war comes, it's them we must fight, to hate them and to fear them and to run and to hide and to accept it all bravely with God on our side. But now we got weapons of the chemical dust. If fire them we're forced to, then fire them we must. One push of the button and a shot the world wide, and you never ask questions with God on your side. In many a dark hour, I've been thinking about this, that Jesus Christ was betrayed by a kiss. But I can't think for you. You'll have to decide whether Judas Iscariot had God on his side. So now, as I'm leaving, I'm weary as hell. The confusion I'm feeling ain't no tongue can tell. The words fill my head and fall to the floor. If God's on our side, he'll stop the next war.
There's all these ways in which we think about being present to God, about being in prayer. And one of the things that I want us to be thinking about as well is this idea that God is not so much removed as God is as close as our next breath. In fact, God is our next breath. So let's just take a deep breath. And this melody that I wrote to this song, Breathe on Me, Breath of Life, it's a little tricky, and unfortunately I understand from the band it may be a little high-pitched, but I want us to sing it together, mainly because I'm going to try to remember how to play it while y'all are singing it. So I want you all to sing it as well. just a chance to prepare our sort of sense, our awareness for this idea of being present to the next breath. Breathe on me, breath of life. Fill me with strength anew, that I may move through all my days with faith and trust in you. Breathe on me, breath of life. Transform me even now, that I may see infinity and into compassion grow. Breathe on me, breath of life. Fill me with strength anew, that I may move through all my days with faith and trust in you, that I may move through all my days with faith and trust in you.
In order to be awake, to be growing in awareness so that we can grow in compassion, we have to figure out ways to slow ourselves down so that we can be awake and rethink our thinking and grow in compassion as we just sang. So I want you to do something with me today. You don't have to close your eyes, but if you don't mind, get comfortable in your chair and then put your fingertips together. And try for a minute just to think about how your fingertips feel. So just sit with that a minute, and we'll let the singing bowl get started when you're ready. Now begin to move your fingers and hands like this. This is a spider doing push-ups on a mirror. But just go with your breath and this movement. Slowing ourselves down so that we can learn to be aware, learn to be awake. So just do that a minute as the singing bowl sings. moving up and down with your hands. Let your breath follow the movement. The scripture says to be still and know that God is near. Amen.
Forward motion, backward glance. Welcome to this age-old dance, where all your goats and dreams and fears are hanging from the chandeliers, and violins begin to play. As the world goes by, all I know is I want to be wide awake. Seekers of status quo, I say let them go, let them just fall away. 'Cause doubt, for all of its fury, cannot hold a flame to any soul that cries. All I know is I want to be wide awake, awake. The drama that is ours, some play men consumed by loss, and some play women in strings of pearls, and some play crazy artist girls, but it's all just costumes on parade. All the world goes by, all I know is I want to be wide awake. Seekers of status quo, I say let them go, let them just fall away. 'Cause fight for all of its fury cannot hold a flame to any soul that cries. All I know is I want to be wide awake, awake. Wasted so much time. Open up my eyes. As the world goes by, all I know is I want to be wide awake. Seekers of status quo, I say let them go, let them just fall away. 'Cause fear, for all of its fury, cannot hold a flame to any soul that cries. All I know is I want to be wide awake, awake.
scripture?
That's good. He'll turn it up. Oh. There we go. Sorry. There you go.
You don't. Okay. The first scripture comes from Psalms 22, 1 through 2. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why so far from my delivery, so empty in the anguish of my words? I call you in the daytime, but you don't answer. And all night long I plead restlessly, uselessly. Matthew 6, 5 through 7. And whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. But when you pray, go into your room and pray to God who is in silence, and your God who sees in silence will be with you. Romans 8:26. Likewise, the presence of God helps us in our humility, for we do not know how to pray as we ought. But that very God connects with us with sighs too deep for words. Okay. Will you join me, the Navajo walking prayer? In beauty may I walk, all day long may I walk. Through the turning seasons may I walk. With beauty before me I walk. With beauty behind me I walk. With beauty above me I walk. With beauty all around me I walk. In youth, wandering on a trail of beauty, lively. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, living again. It is begun in beauty, it is finished in beauty.
So I have this thing I want to read at the beginning from John Shelby Spong. John, some of you all big fans of his, some of you not necessarily big fans of his. Controversial writer, Episcopal priest, pretty much challenging the way we think about tradition and thinking we need to come up with new ways of thinking about our relationship with the holy, with God, with what's divine in our midst, with the sacred all around us. He wrote this about prayer. When St. Paul said that we are to pray without ceasing, he surely did not mean we ought to say prayers without ceasing. When people envision the kingdom of heaven as a place where people are praying all the time, I'd just as soon not go if that's the reality that you have to deal with. I remember being at the Bible church in Northwest Bible. Oh, I shouldn't have said the name. I'm sorry. Anyway, I remember being at a Bible church somewhere over in another city, and as a kid, and I remember how he had said, that when we go to heaven, there's going to be this heavenly golden gated place, and we're all going to be sitting around singing choir songs and hymns, singing the great hymns of the faith. And I remember thinking, even then as a kid, 14 years old, thinking, God, our choir sounds terrible. I just can't imagine what that's going to feel like. And then thinking about his prayers and how tedious sometimes those prayers could be, this idea of praying without ceasing seems a bit ancient, seems a bit obsolete maybe. And yet, this is what I'm going to say right up front. I want you to hang on to it, because we're in this series, in this sort of cultivating a balanced spiritual life, and of all the things, we got cultivating curiosity or learning, and we got cultivating prayer or being aware, we got cultivating service and generosity and gratitude and play. All of these things, I'm going to suggest that this one is the most important. And that in fact, we ought to be praying without ceasing. So just hang on to that, because I don't want you to go too far ahead of me. Because the first thing I think we have to deal with is that I think a lot of folks have a problem with prayer. Maybe not in here, maybe in here. Certainly I still do at times in my life. The reality is that we struggle with life that throws curveballs. We struggle with the blues every now and then. And granted, I'm a middle-class, upper middle-aged, white kid, fingerstyle guitarist. Anybody who sings the blues, even as nice as Mike is, would say, boy, you ain't got the blues. But the truth is we do experience the blues from time to time. We do experience this life is up, life is down. And where does prayer fit in the midst of it? When I was 14, I saw my father for the first time in about 4 or 5 years. He'd moved from Fort Worth to Houston, from Houston to British Honduras. It was 1971. British Honduras eventually became Belize. Some of you probably traveled to Belize. My father was one of the first folks from the United States to ever be there, had a tiny little place called Paradise House. Bad conflicts in my family, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of struggle, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of problems. Hadn't seen him in 4 years, went down to see him by myself at 14. Were very difficult moments together from time to time throughout the weeks that I was there. And I remember he would often say to me, because I had become a Christian a few years before that, I had an experience and was going to the Bible church, and he said, you know, you talk about paradise. We're here. And he showed me he'd show me the name over his hang on a second, I just canceled my sermon. He showed me the name over his hotel, which said Paradise House. And he was like, this is paradise, right? Look at the reef, the second largest barrier reef in the world out there outside of Belize, just half a mile out. And then this beautiful 10 to 12 foot water in between, and this gorgeous reef that went the length of the coastline up and down for miles. He says, where else could you imagine there being paradise? You are here, my friend. But it discounted me, of course. It just discounted who I was and what I understood. And there was all this anger and emotion, and I found myself one mid-morning so upset. I saw next to the little dock was one of those plastic sort of life rafts. And I grabbed a 15-foot pole. It had a little anchor in it, and I just started poling my way out the way that the old fishermen would do when they took their hollowed out logs and tree trunks and would pole their way to the fish traps, the lobster traps and such. And I just poled my way out there slowly, making my way out towards the reef, not really going anywhere, just getting away. And as I poled my way further out there, concentrating on what I was pushing, I noticed the pole was going down further, until after a moment I noticed the pole wasn't touching anything at all. And I looked back, and I was almost a mile away from the shore. I had drifted out through the cut in the reef, and the current was carrying me out to the ocean. And there were no boats. And I was in a tiny little 6-foot plastic raft being carried out. And I said, God, I promise I will never do what I did before. I made all sorts of promises to God. I prayed that God would turn the current around, carry me back in, and then I heard a voice in my head say, don't forget you got an anchor. And I threw the anchor out. It's a 35-foot anchor rope. And it was swinging down underneath the water as the boat continued to go out. And I truly, for one of the first times in my life, had a sense of absolute abandonment and panic. What do we do when we get in those places, right? We pray. Tell the truth, most people are foxhole prayers. We cry out in the midst of the pain, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forgotten me? Where have you gone? Come on, God, I'm really good. I do things. I work well. I'm a kind person, generally, for the most part. I give to, why is this happening to me? We become foxhole prayers, and we just pray, this time, if you just get me out of this one, if you just help me past this one. It's a sense of being sort of victimized by life, the blues. But if we have a precedent for it, right? I mean, go ahead and give me a note here. The whole Old Testament is basically the blues. Been 40 long years, Lord. 40 long years, ain't got no place to call my home. Oh, said it's been 40 long years, Lord. Lord, I got blisters on my toes and left in the desert to roam. Well, I should have stayed back with old Pharaoh. 3 square meals a day, at least it's some kind of home. That's all I got for that one, so. I just said, strike it up if I call you. So here's the thing. The whole Old Testament is really all about the blues. I mean, it's always this struggle of getting it right and getting it wrong and then getting it right and then getting it wrong. And this Deuteronomic understanding of who God was, this ancient sort of understanding that if we're just good enough, we won't have problems. If we're just obedient enough, we won't have problems. But the reality is we get the blues. It comes anyway. It comes to good and bad alike, like the Bob Dylan song. It's not because we've got God on our side, because if we did, God would be on all sides. In fact, in many, many ways, God is present in the midst of all of this mess we're in. So the challenge is then, if it's not about me connecting to God, then what is it about me connecting to God? In other words, if it's not about God fixing my life, fixing things the way I think it should be fixed, then where does prayer come in? What's the point of the prayer? You remember that movie, Bruce Almighty? How many of y'all saw Bruce Almighty? How many of you seen it like 15 times? I watched it because I had kids when we first started watching. The kids were at home, and then I still watch it all the time. And you know, I love this character, Bruce, right? Jim Carrey, I love this character because he's going to fix things. He figured out he could do a better job. God gives him the power. In the first couple of days, he's already overwhelmed by trying to answer these prayers. And so he comes up with a clever idea. He's going to have a software that will just answer yes to everything, right? Seriously, think about it. Yes to everything. Every one of us praying our prayer of individual need. Every one of us praying to God, who surely must be listening to each one of us. Each one of us just as righteous, just as worthy of God's response. Every one of us get our prayers answered. And it's total chaos, right? The whole thing just becomes chaotic. The whole city starts to fall apart. And pretty quickly we realize that a lot of what people pray for is not only not healthy or reasonable, but sometimes it's actually illegal as well. People get prayer all wrong. 1985, Hurricane Gloria came through on the East Coast. One of my favorite televangelists, Pat Robertson, was having a prayer. Said he was praying to God. God was going to pass by Virginia because that's where his organization was. Had other people praying. The hurricane hit towards the coast, turned right, went up the coast. Missed his complex, missed his whole organization. And the next day he was giving God glory and praise and saying it was because of the faithful prayers of everyone involved, and he was thanking them. And don't forget to keep sending in your money because obviously God supports this ministry. Meanwhile, Long Island was devastated. Lost lives and property with God on our side. There's this understanding that's natural for us. Because we're human, because we like what we have, or because we like to be safe, or because it's easy to be afraid. When we operate out of our spirituality, out of this idea of fear, prayer becomes something entirely wrong. In fact, what some people might even say is really pretty much an addictive pattern. It's pretty much like any other addiction. And we lean on it, thinking it's going to answer. Can we throw up the 65, 70%. If you ever studied the Enneagram has 65% of folks are number 6s and 5s, and they're basically people who sort of live in a constant state of wanting everything kind of under control, like meerkats, always kind of on the lookout, always waiting for the next thing to go bad, always waiting to make sure that you got control of things. You don't stare at it too long, it's going to freak you out after a while. It's going to get weird. There's just two heads going back and forth. Don't look at it too long. Richard Rohr and Parker Palmer speak of this spirituality that he suggests that there's two stages of this spirituality. There's the first half, the second half. A lot of us get stuck in the first half. Typically, where Piaget, the educational cognitive psychologist, would say that we're sort of in that concrete stages. But in fact, in our faith, we get stuck in that concrete stage. We don't really have a lot of practice of what it means to be open to awareness, what it means to be aware of the greater reality around us. And so we get stuck in this kind of concrete stage because nothing challenges us. In other words, life is good, life is great until it's bad. And then we turn to God. when in fact we need to be in practice of being present to what's holy in our midst all the time. We need to be in touch with what's possible all the time. And he calls that the second stage of spirituality, the second half of the spiritual life, when life opens up. Most of us orient towards life as a way of as a way of being broken or fixed, broken or fixed, broken or fixed. And until we get out of that mindset, until we get out of what is really an addictive mindset, really a materialistic mindset, in fact, that life is more journey. And even more importantly, it is community. We have to open up to one another. We have to be present with our enemies. We have to be present with folks that make us uncomfortable. We have to be present to moments that are challenging. That until we open up and realize life is journey and God is in the midst of that journey, that we are in the midst of the ground of being, and the ground of being is in the midst of each one of us. Until we get there, we're back to restitution. And I can tell you, I'm going to pray for that same thing. When I get on a flight and I go overseas, I'm going to say, God, please hold this airplane up. Please keep it across the ocean. I'm going to go there because I get scared. Everybody gets scared. I know better. And so I'll practice, and I'll try to remember that I live in the midst of sacredness all the time, that I live in the midst of the holy all the time. There's a lot of ways to practice that. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas. One is to begin thinking like what Sharm was saying, just practicing this ability to just be present. Pico Iyer, great writer and travel writer and thinker, philosopher, he had this wonderful TED talk about stillness. And where he talks about the stillness is, he used to say that traveling around the world was amazing because you see so many things, until he realized one of the most amazing experiences is being still. Think of how many times in your week you intentionally are still. How can you experience the sacred when we're not still? How can we experience the wonder when we're rushing past to the next destination, to the next task that we have to get done, when we're worried about what's happening to us? How can we be still? He says sometimes the best thing you can do is just do it and just stay there. In the boat, as I was floating out past that reef and that further and further away till literally I was down towards the end of the island, I finally caught my breath. It's not the first time I faced fear, and I remembered that. And I caught my breath for a moment and looked down at the ocean and noticed something. The current goes out and the current goes in. And so I took the pole, and with every time the current went in, I just gave it a good thrust. And then as it went out, I just didn't do anything. And then when it went in, I gave it a thrust again. And I continued to do that back and forth until after about an hour, I actually made the shore at the very end of the island. And as a reminder to what it means to be present, and maybe what it means not to always run from things, I got to drag that boat all the way back down to the other end of the island. But this idea of being present. I want to end with one little last short story, and I'll let the band come on up. This camp that I got to work with, called Camp Rainbow. It's this great camp out in Prescott, Arizona, up in the top of the mountains out in Prescott, Arizona, beautiful up there. We would go every August. It is kids with cancer. And one week we decided to go to the top of this mountain because there was a tennis court up there. 2 a.m, one of the counselors said, you got to come up here and see. Second week of August, we got up there, we laid down on our back, and the Perseid meteor shower began. And ever since then, every year, we would bring a couple of extra counselors, maybe a couple of kids, because we're breaking the law. We're not supposed to be sneaking out in the middle of the night from our cabins, but we would do it anyway. And one week, we brought Kat, who was this teenager who had just come that week, first time. She had a bad prognosis with cancer, a brain tumor, but she was in treatment, and they even brought the treatment to the camp so that she could be there. So we were very concerned about Kat. We were very upset and worried and awkward. And we sat out there and waited for the stars to start shooting across the sky as we laid there, and Kat's just laying there silently as we're watching. And then one comes across the sky, and we just go, yeah, that's amazing. That was incredible. And then nothing. And Kat looks over and says, is this it? Is this all there is? And that statement hit Woody and myself. Woody and I are both ministers, and Woody was the music director there with me, and it hit both of us really in the gut, the double meaning of that question. And we didn't know what to say next because we were sure it was going to happen. Maybe we were just 30, 40 minutes early. It's going to happen. And that's when one of the other guys broke the silence and just let out this big loud belch. He just burped. And it kind of took us by surprise, and we all giggled and we all laughed. And then to our surprise, Kat let out one. I mean, she let out one. I mean, she's a little demure girl, and she just let out this big belch. And we were just laughing, and then one other one said, yeah, watch this. And he belched out the alphabet. And before you know it, we were just belching back and forth, and then boom, a flash of light, and then another flash of light. And it went on for like 45 minutes, about 20, 30 flashes every minute. It was amazing. We just sat there in awe. And afterwards, it was probably 3 or 4 in the morning, and Woody's going like, this is the worst idea ever. I'm going to be so beat up all day. Got a whole day of camp ahead. And we're making our way back down to the campground. And as Kat walked away, I looked at Woody, and I said, Woody, you know, we're both ministers. It's a shame we don't get to pray with these kids a lot more. You know, they want this to be non-sectarian and stuff. And Woody looked at me, and he said, Tom, this thing, it's all the blues. And prayer is nothing but the blues wide awake. Last week when I went to my wife and I said, can I help you with cooking? Because she sends me out of the kitchen every day. Whenever she's cooking, she's like, get out. I said, I really want to do something. I was kind of frustrated. So I said, can I at least help prepare things? She said, sure. Go out and get some spices from the garden. And I said, well, what do I get? And she said, I'll tell you what. Probably one of the best things she said to me in a long time. She said, go smell them and pull the ones that excite you.
It's much like you had a 9 to 5 and a mortgage too. That rat race got to me. First it ate me up, then it set me free. One day it buried me alive. I snapped and almost lost my mind. I crawled out just in time to go walking, 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 walking on sacred ground. Walking, 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 walking on sacred ground. At first I lost my way, but I stumbled on until one day I came across a stone with the name of every soul I'd known. I edged around it carefully till it became a memory and set my spirit free to go walking, 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 walking on sacred ground. Walking, I'm walking, walking, walking on sacred ground. We're all afraid of going under. Really any wonder? Caught between the silence and the thunder. I once was much like you, always a lot to do. I ran so hard to stay in place. The wind took on a bitter taste. Now I don't run that race. I go walking, 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 walking on sacred ground. Walking, walking, walking on sacred ground. Walking, walking, walking on sacred ground. Walking, walking, walking on sacred ground.
blues sound? I think we did. Yeah, there at the end, it was like, I can't hear anybody. Can anybody else hear anybody? Let's stand together for prayer. So I invite you to stick around for just a second and
Take somebody's hand real quick. We're going to have a blessing. And stick around. We can sing this wonderful song. Friend of ours, Howard Hanger, All Shall Be Well. And as you do, just take a deep breath again, sharing one another's breath for this moment. So many ways that we are blessed in the world. So many ways to be alive in the world. So many ways to be present in the world. And yes, Holy One, we will pray when things get bad. And yes, we will be worried and anxious, and we will open up to one another to let one another know that we care. Because it's our care that binds us, even in spite of our fears and our limited understanding. But teach us, Holy One, to be present, to be awake in the midst of these blues that we experience. Bless us from this place. We pray in the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen. So let's sing the song, All Shall Be Well. Here we go. All shall be well. All shall be well. All manner of things shall be well. All shall be well. One more time. All shall be well. All shall be well. All manner of things shall be well. All shall be well. They're going to play a little blues. Stick around, have coffee, say hello. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.